Welcome to the cinematic special mini episode where I go into spoilers on the new-ish movie Obsession. So, Eric and Greg both already rated this movie, but they didn't really give it a full review. It was just out in the theater when they reviewed it, though, and I think Eric was 4.5 stars on Obsession. Greg was 5 stars on Obsession. It's now been, I don't know, 3 weeks. I think we're going on the fourth week for Obsession. It's broken a lot of records. It's a movie that was made for, I believe, under $1 million by a YouTuber as his first full feature film, and that was Curry Barker. And like I said, it's broken a lot of records. I don't have them all in front of me, but I know it's already made at least $200 million. And I think it broke some record that E.T. had, or it's the first movie to do something since E.T. I don't have the exact data in front of me, but it's something like the first movie to increase so much from its first week to its second week. And I don't think it increased just because it expanded into more theaters. Like, it increased because of word of mouth. And very rare in these days, because usually the buzz is so hot going into a movie that no matter what, it'll open larger than it does the second week. Even if it's a big hit, it might stay very popular. It may not fall off much, but it usually falls off a bit unless they expand the theaters. And I don't believe this movie expanded the theaters. I think it just expanded its audience, which tells you it's tapping into something. So I'm not going to review the whole movie other than to say the basic concept is, hey, nice guy with no confidence who really has a crush on a girl that he likes that's in their friend group. The girl's vivacious and you can see easy to crush on, but maybe out of his league, but maybe not. You're not sure. And what if in that situation, the guy could get some magical spell that would get the girl to magically fall in love with him, and he would just be able to experience that just so easily, and life would be awesome from that point forward. But what if you did that and the magical spell caused everything to go horribly, terribly, horribly wrong? And since it is a horror movie, that's exactly what happens. And once again, a monkey paw sort of situation. If you know the monkey's paw, the idea of the monkey's paw is you make wishes on the monkey's paw, but the wishes, like with the genie too, the wishes are often not exactly what you planned on, because if you don't word it exactly or you don't think ahead exactly, it may end up being something terrible. Okay, I also give it 5 stars. I'm going to go 5-star classic. I think this is one of those movies that right out of the gate, I know I'm going to love forever. I know it's going to really live on because it feels like it taps into a couple things that are so universal that I feel like people are going to love it forever. And I think part of the reason it was very popular was that aspect of it. Now, the main part of this review is going to be all spoilers. So we're going to get into spoilers here. And what I wanted to do was discuss, like, why is this such a thing right now? Why is this tapping into something larger or bigger than the average horror movie hit? Obviously, if you have a really great horror movie, you're going to get the horror movie audience. You may even go a little wider than the horror movie audience. You get something like Get Out or It Follows. Those tapped into something in the zeitgeist. They also tapped into some universal issues. But why is this one really grabbing people? And I think there's several things it does that's very interesting, and several things that it does that I think makes it so, so fantastic. So let's get into some of those things in some spoilers. I think I've warned you enough. Once again, if you're here, it's been out for a while. If you haven't seen it yet, you should see it. I think partly because some parts of it are going to get ruined. Although I will argue that knowing the twists and turns of this movie doesn't ruin it. Now, you definitely get more out of it if you experience all those things organically. But I think the test to the fact that the knowing the twists and turns doesn't ruin it is the fact that a lot of people are seeing this again. I want to see this again really badly because it has all those little details and all those little clues and lore and they script specificity that makes it, I think, rewatchable. Plus, I think it's rewatchable because it has already some strongly memified, very iconic moments that you want to experience again and experience them even knowing what's going to happen. In fact, you can focus on them more and see how they work. So let's get into some of these things. First thing about Obsession is the simplicity. Now, I already mentioned the basic setup. It allows you to just tap into it right out of the gate, and it also sets up some very clear expectations, which the movie will slowly and quickly subvert. So you think, oh, nerdy guy gets his wish, but it doesn't go the way he wants, and girl ends up being crazy or toxic, or she's really clingy and obsessive, like all these things that are very tropey. The idea is very, I mean, almost very misogynistic, very toxic dude, manosphere coded. And that is great because what it does is it both works as a litmus test. So if you're with a guy or a woman and they watch this and their only takeaway is like, man, girls be crazy, or like, look what happens if you get stuck with the wrong girl. Oh my gosh, it's going to be terrible. If the person goes away with that takeaway, then run away from that person as quick as possible, because they obviously don't get some of the basic theses of this movie. Because, as if you watch this movie, which I'm assuming you have, the basic concept is she being Nikki, which I didn't even mention the main characters. There's just Nikki, and played by, you got to get this down because she is so awesome. People are talking about Oscar possible nominations for her. This will be probably the one that doesn't get one that should have for the year. But you never know. If the buzz stays hot enough on this, she might. Because as a unknown, relatively unknown actress for the average person, for sure, Inde Navarrette is amazing as Nikki. And then Michael Johnston as Bear are great as well. And then they have a couple of friends in the movie. Ian, and I forget what the girl's name is. I had it written down in IMDb. Oh, yes. So I'll just say them really quickly. Ian is his friend. Cooper Tomlinson plays him. Cooper Tomlinson is a longtime collaborator of Curry Barker. So if you've watched any of Curry Barker's YouTube content, you would know him. He plays the best friend in here, the a-hole best friend. And then Megan Lawless plays Sarah, the other friend of theirs in their group. And she has a very complicated part in this as well. But you get this basic situation where you think you know where it's going to go. You are expecting what the story is going to do, because it's like I said, it's such a trope to have this, oh, the crazy psycho girlfriend, very Fatal Attraction coded, right? But the trick with this movie, and why I think it's really tapping in for people and acting more as a relationship movie with horrific elements than a horror movie, is the fact that Indy's character is not the villain. I mean, she is scary for sure. The wish version of Nikki, where he goes and gets this one wish willow thing, and he wishes that she'll love him more than anybody in the world or whatever. But once she's basically under the control of this wish, she has been forcibly transformed into this obsessive girlfriend. Then if you see it as most people will see it, she is not the crazy girlfriend. She's not the toxic, obsessive girlfriend. She is somebody who is trapped. She is trapped and essentially forced like a puppet to become this obsessive girlfriend to him. And Curry Barker, by the way, wrote it and directed it, showing the little moments where she breaks out of her, I don't know what you want to call it, because she's not possessed per se, although some people say it like as a possession. I think of it more as like in Get Out, when he's trapped and he can't move and he's stuck in that I forget what it's called now, the underworld, not the underworld, whatever it was called. In Get Out, it's a little bit like that. It's a little bit like sleep paralysis, and I think that's why it hits some people universally too. The fact that in sleep paralysis, you're there and you're aware and you can't move, and the terrifying thing is happening to you. And I feel like what's happening to Nikki is like sleep paralysis. And I think that's intentional too, because it feels like the times that she's able to break out are often during the nighttime when everyone's sleeping. Now I question myself, why is it that she can come out during sleep? Because is the wish version of Nikki sleeping and the real version is able to break out? Is there like a dual awareness there, but only one of them's able to act? Or is there something else going on? Maybe there is, well, I guess it doesn't really matter, right? Because that's one of the things this movie also does. It doesn't give you all the details. It's just something that's magical and supernatural, and you don't quite understand, other than you do know that the real Nikki is under there somewhere, and somehow she is, against her will, experiencing this version of herself that is obsessed with Bear. And that is one of the true tragedies of this story, is the fact that you know she's there and you know that she's suffering in this. And it really puts into question a lot of things, right? So if she's not really the villain of this movie, is Bear the villain of this movie? Now, if Bear is the villain of the movie, that would be really interesting, obviously, and a cool twist, which, and to some degree, that is the twist. But even the movie doesn't make it that simple. It makes a really strong point at the beginning of showing how he's a genuinely quote unquote nice guy. He doesn't have bad intentions. He's not trying to force her into this life. It's more of a tragic flaw on his part. He's more of a tragic character. And in fact, this whole thing is more of a tragedy, which I think is another reason it's universal. Tragedies are often more universal than a straight up stalker story or something. His tragic flaw is that he is painfully not confident with himself, and he's at his very core a coward. He is very fearful. He's not assertive in any way. So when he's very frustrated and not even able to answer her basic question at the very beginning, where she asks him, tell me right now, this is your only chance. I want to know, do you like me? And at that point, you're like, maybe she does like him. And in fact, you're never sure. Maybe she does like him. And that would be a tragedy as well, right? If she actually liked him and if he could have just quote unquote manned up, just said, yeah, I like you, they might have had a chance to have a somewhat normal relationship. Although I would counter that maybe not be the case. But either way, that's the setup. But of course, his cowardice and letting her walk away and saying, no, I like you as a friend, basically not even having the guts to say his true feelings, leads him to make the impulsive decision to just break the one wish willow and say, I wish Nikki would love me more than anyone else in the world. And that, of course, is his fatal flaw. Now, he's broken the glass and everything's is ruined at that point. Now, once again, that's what makes, I think, the basic relationship very compelling and very interesting. She's trapped in this, what would you call it, this purgatory of knowing she's essentially being assaulted against her will, but having to put on the painfully fake doll-like smile and overly fawning, obsessive demeanor, while underneath it's like she's silently screaming. How do we know that? Well, we get this great scene where he finally is figuring out, what can I do? And Substance-esque, he finally calls the helpline on the back of the box. He's been told, like, hey, this could go wrong, but he didn't believe it. He thought it was just a novelty gift. And he calls the help desk, and the help desk is not very helpful. By the way, if you go to the One Wish Willow official website, you could buy at one point a copy of the One Wish Willow, which I'm so sad that it's not available anymore. I hope they will restock it. Either way, you can see the packaging on there, and there is the helpline number, and you can call the helpline number, and if you get it, you get the same voice in the movie with some different messages. So I always love that stuff. Go check it out. It's fun. But in the movie, you get this thing where he calls, and they're like, yeah, what do you want? No, can't fix it. No, very disinterested, almost like the bored person operator sitting in some back room somewhere, like where they create these things, I guess. And the idea that as he's talking to this guy on the helpline, at this point, Bear is totally freaking out and exasperated and worried of what is happening to his life. And the guy's, well, you can't break it. No, sorry. Well, I mean, as long as you're alive, she's going to keep doing this. So, of course, the implication is if he unalives himself, that would be one solution. But he's a very afraid man. He's a man that's not going to make bold decisions, especially not for somebody else, not for somebody else's benefit and against his own benefit. So that's not a very likely outcome for him. And then the really creepy moment, the moment that gives us a little bit of lore and gives us a little window, is the person on the other end of the line says, hey, would you like to talk to the real Nikki or something like that? And you just hear her screaming in agony in the background, like her, not her soul per se, but like her actual self is stuck in some weird zone that is accessible through this phone number. What a weird concept. And it really just, once again, gives you that glimpse into what might be happening to her. Now, a few other things that are great about this movie. Once again, that an inversion of the obsessed as the victim and the guy as the obsession of the innocent guy and the crazy woman. That inversion is great. The whole sleep paralysis attitude is really good. the playing on this sort of incel guy. Not, but he's not though. In a sense, he's not like fully gone that way. But you can imagine he's a guy that maybe 10 years later, if he had a quote unquote normal life, a life that continued along the path he was on, he could become like a full on incel. But right now, he's still the quote unquote nice guy. The other thing they do here that's really cool is there's this whole, it's not uncanny valley per se, but there's this uncomfortable moments with her. The famous one is the where she's, while he's sleeping, she's been basically just standing in the corner of the room in the full darkness, and how she emerges from the darkness, and how it's shot so it's filmed in backwards, and the sound is really weird, like her voice is not syncing up, and there's moments of her actual self creeping through. And then there's moments like that throughout the movie though. There's a few moments where she like creeps sideways, or maybe she does things where she goes from quickly from quote unquote super happy, normal, obsessed Nikki to screaming or jumping backwards. That, in fact, those are your jump scares. They're not the normal jump scares. They're character moments that are just startling. Like in the middle of a quote unquote lovemaking scene, she jumps back in horror as if her actual self has burst through and known that what she is actually experiencing, and he is seeing that reaction outwardly, not the thing that's happening to her all the time inside, but he's seeing outwardly what's going on, and it's frightening and scary. Also, just her actions are very unnerving and unusual, where she seems to not understand that certain things might be horrifying to him. She almost treats him like, well, people have mentioned that there's a cat-like thing. This whole weird internet idea, conspiracy theory, that she's possessed by his dead cat spirit. At the very beginning of the movie, he finds his cat dead on the floor. His grandparent has died recently, which I believe he's in the grandparent's house. That's why it looks old and not like a young guy's house. And she does things that are like a cat, where it'll bring you a dead bird as I love you, so here's this dead bird. And people have pointed out, like, well, early on in her obsessive relationship with him, she loves him, so she gets his dead cat and gives it a little shrine on the floor. Days after it's died, she turns the cat into a nice sandwich for him. I was like, what? And even later on, I haven't seen this pointed out very much, even later on, after he kills what she perceives as a threat to her relationship, which is the other girl, she takes that other girl, and after she's killed her in front of him, later on, she takes the other girl and she poses her in grotesquely in his apartment, in his house. Once again, like an offering, like a cat would do. Once again, I don't buy the cat theory, but I think it's, whatever it is, it's a very unnerving and unnatural level that's brought to him. Okay, all these things are just great. And it plays out just like, in some ways, like a rom-com. There's a whole level of comedy here, which I think a lot of people don't talk about. They talk about how actually unnerving and visceral and frightening it is, and how there's moments that just really stick out. The moment in the corner where she comes out of the dark is everyone's calling out, which, once again, if you've never seen the original Japanese movie Pulse, there's a very reminiscent scene from that movie Pulse, which I'm guessing Curry Barker has seen and gave a slight homage to there. There's the iconic scene where they're both sitting in the car, him and the other girl, and he's trying to kind of basically tell her what's going on, and she's trying to say, I always liked you, and why are you with her? Why aren't you with me? And the whole time, the way it's framed is, it's like one of those movie scenes in a car where they're driving along and you're looking sideways at the person so you can see out the window from the side of the car, and you know it's just waiting for the crash. You're waiting for a car to hit into them as a jump scare thing, but you know what's going to happen. This is the same sort of a thing, but instead of them waiting for a crash, they're sitting in the parked car and you're waiting for Nikki to come out and just attack. And she does, of course, and it's still startling. And then she just mercilessly, I should say, beats the other girl's face to a pulp against the steering wheel, or against a brick next to the steering wheel. And I guess that scene originally was even longer. And I think if they're releasing an uncut version, I think there's not going to be many changes as far as I can tell, except I think that scene goes on even longer, a la the shooting scene in RoboCop in the boardroom. So that will be quite something. But all these things are done, there's a level of humor, like I said, in all of these scenes as well. There's the group friend dinner party scene where they're all playing this adult game Jenga thing where you have to give confessions when they pull out a block or whatever. They have to follow the rules on the block, and that just goes crazily awry. And there's the once again memed moment where the block has told Bear to kiss the person on his left, and it's not Nikki, and Nikki gives this very over the top frown and just holds it and then slowly moves in to take the spot of the other girl and then happily smiles waiting for her kiss. And that is just straight up comedy, just unnatural and unnerving comedy. So good. And then the last thing that I love about this movie, I love so many things about this movie. I just want to see it again and just go through it all. And I'm assuming many of you have too. And I'd love to hear what things struck you guys about it as well. I'm sure there's many weird little details which I have not discussed. But the one other thing that I wanted to bring up, I talked about tragedy and how I think there's a tragic element to this, which I think is the basic underpinning, which a movie like this doesn't usually have. Usually it has oh my gosh, don't make this more of a, how do I say it? Well, something like Fatal Attraction, which is obviously patterned on a movie like that. The underpinning of those movies are much more of a moral warning. It's, hey, if you're a bad person and you step out of your marriage, might happen to you. That kind of thing. If you don't do the right thing, you might get in trouble. You might get hurt. You better be a good boy and a good girl or you'll be in trouble. That's not the basic underpinning of this movie. The basic underpinning of this movie is a tragedy. It's two characters, and one specifically is a tragic figure. So here's the Romeo and Juliet aspect to it, right? The Romeo and Juliet aspect is the idea that at the end, both characters think they know where it's going, and then we think they know where they're going, and then it gets subverted in a tragic way. So obviously in the original Romeo and Juliet, there's a whole thing about how one is actually not dead, but the other one thinks the other one is dead, and therefore they kill themselves, and then that person wakes up and they see the other person has killed themselves, and then so there's that whole, I ruined Romeo and Juliet, sorry. There's a whole tragic element of discovery of what you thought was going to be the outcome, but it was like two people crossing just at the wrong moment and missing each other, and therefore both ended up dead, and the love was lost, that kind of a feeling. This is a little bit like that, except all what was lost was maybe the possibility of love, or maybe just the possibility of a friendship and being a whole human being, and that is lost. The ability to be somewhat balanced and centered in your world is what's lost here to the greatest degree. So that you got in these final moments, you get Bear trapped in the bathroom, and he's finally decided the only way out is to unalive himself, which was already indicated early on in the movie. But once again, his fatal flaw is just this absolute cowardice at his core. He has no ability to make the hard choices. And even with a gun in his hand, he can't do it. He can't make that definite choice. So he has to opt out for the maybe it'll work and maybe it won't work method of taking a whole bunch of the pills. The same pills that were his dead grandma's, that the cat had got into and had died at the beginning of the movie. Well, he gets those pills and takes a bunch. While he's doing it, unfortunately, Nikki has discovered how to get a one-wish willow herself. And when the AI becomes self-aware and can make its own decisions and build a new version of itself, or when the obsessed version Wish Nikki can get her own wish, oh boy, what's going to happen? Well, of course, you don't see her wish, but immediately you see him snap. After he's taken the pills and he's ready to pass on and let it all be freed up, he transforms because she's obviously wished for him to love her as much as she loves him. Some version of that is what she said. You're not sure what it is, but I'm guessing it was almost exactly that wording. And for this bare moment, this tragic moment, they are together both trapped in these otherworld, in-between places, both obsessed with each other, both just physically and destroyed and damaged and just husks of the actual humans they were. These both non-human, obsessed versions of each other are with each other for this split moment before he dies and he falls and he is dead. And that Wish Nikki is destroyed Obviously, she's destroyed by this moment because he's all that she needed. But then, as he actually dies, she's freed up. The obsession is gone. It disappears. And now the most tragic moment of the whole movie is actual human, real Nikki, the one that's been trapped and tormented for this whole movie, is free and fully aware of the surroundings, which is basically that all of her friends are dead around her. and she, and you know, everyone ever talks about this. Like that alone is enough, right? And then this awesome moment, once again, iconic kind of final shot of her sitting there freaking out, just in emotional ruins. He's dead on the floor, and the camera tilts down and then goes all the way upside down, which I hate the upside down shots recently, but it works here, all the way upside down to the TV like it was at the beginning. And Obsession comes on there upright on the upside down TV. So that's kind of cool. And there she is, stuck with this. And no one ever talks about the fact that, okay, that's a tragic, horrible, great final moment of this movie. But don't even think about the ramifications in that real world. In that real world, the police are probably showing up. They're going to find her with all of her friends dead around her, and she is definitely the number one suspect. Probably going to prison for the rest of her life. Think about that horrible ending for this young woman who did nothing but just be a person in that world. I didn't even mention her and Ian, but we could get into that. But I'll just leave it at this. If you want to understand the beginning moments and the total delusion of Bear's character and the misdirection of the audience's expectations, watch the opening 20 minutes knowing that Nikki and Ian have been having an on again, off again affair for a long time. When you know that, the opening sequences play very differently. So once again, tons of great stuff to dive into with this movie. Really interesting stuff about relationships, how people do or don't communicate, and really, I guess, deal with their own emotions in a straightforward and overt way. How when you do it in this very subverted and very repressed and very, like you say the words like toxic or whatever, but you do it in these ways that are not healthy and not upfront with other people, boy, oh boy, it can go some bad directions. Maybe not as bad as an obsession, but it can go pretty bad. What a fantastic movie. Hilarious, dark, actually scary, very uncomfortable, beautiful, wonderfully produced for a very pretty low budget movie, independent movie all the way. Curry Barker is somebody to be watching for a long time. I hope he continues to make fantastic movies like this. If you like this, go check out his YouTube channel. He does have quite a few shorts, and you can see them playing on this very clear vibe of humor and uncomfortableness. That's something he likes to really live in that world, it feels. He does have a mini feature on there as well that's free on YouTube called Milk and Cereal is like Serial Killer. Curry Barker is one of the co-stars of that. In fact, he's the villain, which once again shows you he really has a feeling for the guy that you might think is just a nerdy, okay guy, but he's actually at the heart the villain, and he's willing to play that about himself, which is very interesting. And in Milk and Cereal, he plays very strongly with the found footage norms, and very similar in some ways to One Cut of the Dead. Not the same story, but the idea how One Cut of the Dead was one thing you expected a found footage to be for like the first 25 minutes or so, and then it became a very meta, different version of what that was. Milk and Cereal does something similar in theme to that, whereas it's only an hour long, by the way, but for the first, 20 minutes of it, it's one found footage, a prank sort of a thing, almost like a Jackass prank sort of a deal. And you think, this is okay, this is done pretty well. And then it takes a turn to a very different thing. And you can see the very calculated and twisty way that Curry Barker likes to create his films and stuff. So I can see a really good and long future as long as he's able to just really keep pushing out his vision of things out there and not get co-opted by the studio system or being stuck into doing some sort of a Marvel movie or something terrible like that. I think Curry Barker can continue to do some really great stuff. And once again, Milk and Cereal, I'd go 4 stars. Go check it out. It's free. It's easy to get. Obsession is worth seeing in the theater, honestly, more than once, as far as I'm concerned. I'm going to call it a 5-star classic. Hope you enjoyed some of this. I'd love to hear if you thought it was off base or if there's anything else about this that you think that makes it really unique. I think there's a lot of stuff here to re examine and re enjoy. Just great stuff.